Man, this is kind of off topic, but did y'all hear that a few weeks ago it was the 10-year anniversary of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2? I was blown away by that. I mean, that was a hugely defining event of my childhood. But then the other crazy thing was that same day, it was also the 5-year anniversary of Stranger Things coming out, which was also kind of a defining event of my teen years, I guess. And now that's 5 years old. It blows my mind. That literally has nothing to do with this video. I was just kind of thinking about it because Greta Gerwig's Little Women is almost 2 years old now. And yet I'm still thinking about it like nearly every day. I really think that Greta Gerwig's Little Women is one of the best adaptations ever made. I saw it like 6 times in theaters as opposed to Lady Bird, I think I saw 3 times. I've said, or maybe someone else said this, I don't know if it was me, that Lady Bird was sort of the best testament to Greta Gerwig's writing abilities. You know, it was a great screenplay. But I think Little Women was the best testament to Greta Gerwig as a director because it is a brilliantly directed movie. Every time I watch her Little Women, it feels like I have entered a dream. And when it ends, it feels like I've just woken up from a dream. It's like a visual symphony in some way. I don't know. Like, all of that sounds sort of saccharine and overly poetic, but it is one of these movies that just like envelops you into the haze of magic that it creates. I don't even know how else to describe it. One of the very interesting things about this adaptation of Little Women is the way that it differs from the source material and differs from previous adaptations of that source material, right? I mean, one of the big things that everyone was talking about when the movie came out was the way that it plays with parallel timelines. And I remember when I saw the movie in theaters, you could literally hear people explaining the parallel timelines to their grandmas in the back row. Like, that was how much it was sort of like, oh, this is new, this is different. So if you haven't seen the movie, first of all, go watch it. But second of all, it is an adaptation that doesn't necessarily change the source material, but it does reorganize it so that basically there's a past timeline where the girls are young and then a present or future-ish timeline, and we're jumping back and forth between those two periods of their lives and seeing them coexist together. The direction of all of that stuff, I remember really blowing my mind when I first saw it in theaters because there are all of these subtle touches that Greta Gerwig puts in to clue you in on whether you're watching the past or the present. And then there are things like in the present that are evocative of the past. Like, for instance, all of the past stuff is very drenched in this warm glow. It's all warm, saturated colors and sunny golden hour light. And then the present stuff is more gray and blue and overcast. But there are certain scenes in the present day stuff where this golden light sort of seeps through the trees or exists in the background of something. And those tend to be the scenes where the characters are reflecting on the past or remembering the nostalgia of the past, even though it's long gone. There's also all of these little hints with the costume design and the hairstyles that change from past to present that clue you into what you're watching. But the more compelling stuff stems from the way in which the past and present are used to juxtapose and create emotions based on the clash between how things were and how they are now. More than that, though, the parallel timelines can sort of create this tragic irony where the movie starts and we see Meg and her husband struggling with money and, you know, having very hard times as a husband and wife. And then later in the movie, we see them getting married and, you know, having this golden age of when they were young. And it creates this sense of melancholy where you see their joy in this moment, but you also know where they're going to go in the future. Another thing, and I think this sort of gets into how this adaptation sort of improves on previous adaptations, is that because of the parallel timelines, we are able to introduce the character of Professor Bear at the start of the movie and have him last throughout, rather than having him introduced halfway through, which is how it happens in the book and in every other adaptation that they've made. One of the biggest complaints about Little Women was the way in which Joe's love interest, the professor at the end, is introduced out of nowhere, you know, towards the end of the movie, and then she ends up with him. This sort of solves that by cutting to the present, or almost the future, at the start of the movie, showing him introduced as a character and establishing him throughout the film, And then by the end, it's like, oh yeah, we've known him all along. Like this makes sense, rather than him sort of coming out of nowhere if things were ordered sequentially. One of the things that blew my mind when I went back and watched some of the bonus features and listened to Greta Gerwig talking about her logic for adapting the source material was that she went through the book and realized that the first half of the book, the first part where the girls are young, could almost be split in a way that would act as a companion to moments that happen later in the book when the girls are older. And so what she does is create this sense of poetry where we're seeing these things happening when they were young and things happening when they were old, and they almost fit together in this very satisfying way. The first flashback that we get happens when the movie starts and Joe is dancing with Professor Bear at this party. And then we flash back to the past when she was younger, to the night that she first danced with Teddy at a party. And so they almost fit together in this satisfying way. I remember when the movie came out, there were some people who kind of felt like the parallel timeline thing was inserted for no reason, and that, it was sort of nonsensical. We were just hopping back and forth between past and present for no particular reason. But as I've watched the movie over and over again in the past couple of years, you start to see that every single transition from past to present and present to past was extremely intentional and has some sort of cue that reminds the character of that moment, before or later. So that was just sort of me geeking out about how much I freaking love this movie. I mean, I could talk about tons of other things. Saoirse Ronan is great. Florence Pugh, holy cow, what a performance. I mean, she's so good. And the way she plays Amy in a totally different way than we've ever seen that character in other adaptations, and she plays the young version and the old version so well, it's just phenomenal. And the costume design and the production design and oh my gosh, Alexandra Desplat's score is just insane. I listen to that all the time because it's such a vibe. But sorry, this is all besides the point. This is not what this video is about. Whenever a film adaptation of a famous book is released, there is always this massive discourse about how accurate it was to the source material, right? I mean, you get tons of YouTube videos with people comparing the source material to the movie adaptation. And, I feel like there's a lot of people, especially in the literary community, who often will judge a movie entirely based on how accurate it was to the book, rather than, how good it was as a movie. Now, to put it out there, I am a little bit biased because when I saw Little Women for the first time, I had not read the book and I had not seen any other adaptations. And this actually did cause me then to go back and read the book and to watch several of the other adaptations, and I adored a lot of them and really adored the book. But yes, it was my first taste of the story, and I fell in love with it through this lens. Still, it is weird to me because I interacted with a lot of people, especially some of my friends who are more bookish people, who watched the recent Little Women adaptation and didn't like it very much because it wasn't quote-unquote accurate to the source material, or it didn't live up to what other adaptations had done with the source material. And there's always this sense in which, people compare it to previous adaptations and say, oh, well, that was more accurate. Oh, that was more accurate, rather than saying, oh, well, that was more creative, or that worked better on film. It's always odd to me because I think the purpose of an adaptation should not just be to recycle the same material and give you the exact same experience that you had when you read a book. I think the purpose of an adaptation should be to adapt the source material to a new medium and give you a new experience with the new tools that are available in that medium. It's not really that I think adaptations should always improve upon the book or make it better by changing it in some way. I just think it's that adaptations should adequately utilize the tools of the medium that they are using, right? And this is the filmic medium. I think it's not the same as words on a paper. I guess I'm just always of the mind that adaptations should provide a fundamentally new experience rather than trying to recycle and give you the exact same experience you had when you experienced the original. I think Greta Gerwig's Little Women is the gold standard for doing something like that, right? I mean, we haven't even talked about the ending of the movie where she almost inserts the character of Louisa May Alcott into the movie within the presence of Joe, and gives her the ending that she actually wanted for the characters rather than the one that the publisher forced her to write. That's sort of the brilliant way that Greta's script allows her to have her cake and eat it too, right? Where we do get the happy ending with Joe sort of running off with Professor Bear, but that's within this meta-narrative context of she's writing a happy ending to her story, and the happier ending is her actually getting her book published and having that as her legacy, which then ties into Louisa May Alcott. I love adaptions that really are willing to get creative with the source material and provide a fundamentally different experience from what you would have experienced in the previous iteration, right? I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons that I love Hamilton so much. It's something that gives you a similar experience to reading your history books, but it also provides a narrative and backstory for these characters that makes it all more compelling, and it speaks through the medium of Broadway in a way that a history book never could. And so that's what I guess I wanted to talk about with this video, is the concept that I think whenever art is rebooted or recycled or a new adaptation is made of the same old thing, it should ultimately be able to get creative and do something different rather than being held to the standard of providing the same experience that every other adaptation has ever done. I guess I really wanted to ask you guys, what are some of your favorite adaptations that are willing to get creative with the source material and provide a fundamentally different and new experience that makes it feel fresh? I would say, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with an adaptation that, takes a book and adapts it to the big screen in a very accurate way without making huge diversions or anything. But especially with something like Little Women that has been adapted so many times, I was super relieved to have a filmmaker who was willing to take a risk and interpret the material in a very new way. So be sure to let me know what some of your favorite adaptations are in the comments below, and also what you think makes a great adaptation. I think that would be an interesting discussion to have. But either way, I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for being here, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.